Have you ever met someone who was just breathtakingly confident, but completely and utterly wrong? Maybe it's a coworker who pitches terrible ideas with the conviction of a genius, or that friend who gives you life advice so bad it's almost impressive. You stand there, listening to them, and a single question echoes in your mind: how can they be so sure of themselves when they clearly have no idea what they're talking about? It's one of the most frustrating and fascinating paradoxes of human nature. You'd think that the less someone knows, the more hesitant they'd be. But often, the exact opposite is true. Well, it turns out this isn't just a random personality quirk you have to endure. It's a predictable and powerful psychological phenomenon known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. And understanding it won't just help you deal with the blissfully ignorant people in your life, it will fundamentally change the way you think about your own knowledge and skills. So, let's explore the subtle reasons why some people are trapped on the peak of Mount Stupid, blissfully unaware that they're even on a mountain at all. And stick around until the end, because we'll uncover how this same effect explains why many truly brilliant people feel like frauds, and why that feeling might actually be a good sign. First, we have to talk about what psychologists call the double curse. This is the absolute core of the Dunning-Kruger effect, and it's a real mind-bender. The idea is simple, yet profound. The skills you need to be good at something are the very same skills you need to recognize competence in that area. This means that if you lack the first, you automatically lack the second. It's a built-in, self-sustaining blind spot. The psychological term for this is a deficit in metacognition, which is just a fancy way of saying thinking about your own thinking. To know that you're bad at something, you need a certain level of expertise to even begin to judge your own performance. Without that expertise, your brain has no frame of reference. It's like trying to proofread an essay in a language you don't speak. You might be able to see that there are words on the page, but you have no way of knowing if they're spelled correctly or form coherent sentences. Your brain can't see the errors, so it defaults to assuming there are none. Imagine a man, let's call him Barry, who decides he's a phenomenal singer. He belts out songs in the shower, at karaoke, anywhere he can, completely off-key. But in his head, he sounds like a Grammy-winning artist. The problem is, Barry doesn't have a good ear for pitch or rhythm. Because he can't accurately hear musical notes, he can't tell that his own notes are painfully flat. He's cursed twice, first by his inability to sing well, and second by his inability to realize he can't sing well. He isn't being arrogant on purpose, his brain is simply incapable of spotting the errors that are obvious to everyone else cringing in the audience. When his friends force a smile and say, "You've got a lot of passion, Barry," he doesn't hear the subtext. He hears confirmation of his passion, which in his mind is directly linked to his talent. This double curse creates a blind spot so total, it's like trying to see your own eyes without a mirror. The second reason this overconfidence persists is something we are all guilty of contributing to: the absence of honest feedback. Most of us are socially conditioned to be polite. We avoid awkward confrontations and try not to hurt people's feelings. While this is often a kind and necessary impulse for social cohesion, it can create a protective bubble around an incompetent person, shielding them from the one thing they need most: a dose of reality. The psychology here is about social harmony over brutal honesty. On a deep level, our brains are wired to maintain group cohesion. Challenging someone directly risks creating conflict, which could lead to social ostracization, a primal fear for a social species like ours. We subconsciously perform a cost-benefit analysis. Is the momentary awkwardness of telling my friend his new painting is terrible worth the potential damage to our friendship? For most day-to-day interactions, the answer is a resounding no. So instead of honest critique, we offer vague, non-committal praise. "Wow, that's so creative," or "I love the colors you used." This polite lie, or even just a lack of direct criticism, is interpreted by the other person as validation. They don't hear, "You're avoiding telling me it's bad." They hear, "They think it's good." Think about a manager at a small company who is terrible with technology. They insist on a convoluted system involving printed emails, manual data entry into multiple spreadsheets, and weekly meetings that could be an email. Their employees, not wanting to overstep, create conflict, or risk their jobs, simply work around the manager's bad ideas. They secretly use shared cloud documents and messaging apps to get the work done efficiently, then spend an extra hour every Friday translating it all back into the manager's broken system. They sigh and roll their eyes in private, but in meetings, they nod along. The manager, seeing that productivity is fine and the work is getting done, concludes that their system is brilliant. They live in a world where they've never been directly told they're wrong, so they have every reason to believe they're always right. This echo chamber of politeness reinforces their inflated sense of competence day after day. Third, we have the powerful illusion of knowledge that comes from learning just a tiny bit about a subject. This is the stage where a person climbs to the very peak of Mount Stupid. When you first start learning something new, be it a language, a software, or a complex historical event, you gain a small amount of information, and your confidence can skyrocket. Why? Because you only know what you know. You are blissfully, wonderfully unaware of the sheer vastness of what you don't know. The psychological principle at play is a failure to appreciate complexity. A novice has learned a few basic rules or facts, and they mistakenly assume that's all there is to it. They've moved from unconscious incompetence, not knowing what they don't know, to conscious incompetence, knowing a little, but it feels like they've jumped straight to mastery. They haven't yet encountered the exceptions, the nuances, the conflicting theories, and the decades of research that define true expertise. Think about learning to cook. You learn one recipe for a spaghetti bolognese. It tastes good. Suddenly, you feel like you understand Italian cooking. You start giving your friends tips on their pasta dishes. What you don't realize is the world of different pasta shapes, regional sauce variations, the science of the Maillard reaction, and the delicate art of balancing flavors that a true chef has mastered. This is also the person who watches a 20-minute YouTube video on astrophysics and then starts explaining the mysteries of the universe at a dinner party. They confidently use terms like quantum entanglement and dark matter, but they have no idea about the complex mathematics, theoretical physics, and decades of debate behind those concepts. In their mind, they've grasped the subject. Their tiny island of knowledge feels like a continent because they can't see the endless ocean of ignorance surrounding it. It's only after you continue to learn, and that ocean comes into view, that your confidence rightfully plummets into what's known as the Valley of Despair. This valley is where true learning actually begins. The fourth reason is the powerful influence of our own cognitive biases, specifically confirmation bias. Our brains are wired to be efficient, not necessarily accurate. One of the biggest shortcuts they take is to actively look for information that confirms what we already believe, while conveniently ignoring, forgetting, or explaining away anything that challenges it. For a person with low skill and high confidence, this is like pouring gasoline on a fire. Each confirmation, no matter how small, delivers a tiny hit of dopamine, reinforcing the belief and making it feel good to be right. Their brain will actively filter reality to match their self-perception. If they believe they're a brilliant negotiator, they will vividly remember the one time they got a small discount on a car. They'll tell that story over and over, embellishing it each time. But they will completely forget, or downplay, the dozen other times they were taken advantage of or failed to make a deal. Their successes are seen as proof of their innate talent, while their failures are brushed off as bad luck, a rigged system, or someone else's fault. Imagine someone who fancies themselves a great stock picker. They buy 10 different stocks based on their gut feeling. 9 of them lose money or stay flat, but one of them doubles in value. The Dunning-Kruger effect, supercharged by confirmation bias, means they will focus exclusively on that one successful pick. They'll tell everyone, "I knew it. I have a gift for this." They might join online forums dedicated to that one stock, where every other member is also celebrating its rise, creating an impenetrable information bubble. When a financial news report highlights the company's underlying problems, they'll dismiss it as market manipulation or fake news. Their mind builds a legal case in their own favor, and they are the star witness, the lawyer, and the judge, all at once. Finally, and perhaps most surprisingly, the Dunning-Kruger effect also explains the opposite phenomenon, why so many truly skilled people suffer from imposter syndrome. This is the other side of the coin. While those with low ability overestimate themselves, those with high ability often underestimate themselves. The psychology here is a different kind of blind spot. Experts are so deeply immersed in their field that they are acutely aware of every nuance, every exception, and every remaining mystery. They know exactly how much they don't know, and it's a humbling experience. Furthermore, they often fall prey to something called the false consensus effect. Because a task is easy for them, thanks to thousands of hours of practice, they mistakenly assume it must be easy for everyone else too. They've forgotten what it was like to be a beginner. They project their current ease and intuition onto others, which devalues their own skill. Think of a brilliant graphic designer who can create a stunning logo in under an hour. When a client is blown away by the result, the designer might shrug and say, "Oh, it's nothing special, really. The software does most of the work." They aren't being falsely modest. In their mind, the process of balancing color, typography, and shape feels simple and intuitive. They also remember the 15 failed drafts they discarded, the hours spent searching for the right font, and the one tiny detail they still wish they could change. They see the messy, imperfect process, not the flawless final product. They project that feeling of ease onto others, unable to imagine that someone else would struggle for days just to create something half as good. They compare themselves not to the average person, but to the titans and pioneers in their field, which makes them feel small and inadequate. So if you ever feel like an imposter, it might just be a sign that you're actually good enough to know how much there is left to learn. So, where does that leave us? The Dunning-Kruger effect is a fundamental part of the human condition. It's not about intelligence, it's about self-awareness. It's a cognitive blind spot that affects us all in some area of our lives. The person who is overconfident about their business skills might be incredibly humble about their cooking. The person who thinks they're a driving expert might admit they know nothing about gardening. The real lesson here isn't just about spotting this effect in other people and feeling smug. It's about having the courage to look for it in ourselves. The antidote is a simple but powerful combination: curiosity and humility. It's the willingness to say "I don't know," to actively seek out honest feedback, especially when it stings, and to embrace the idea of being a lifelong student. The wisest people aren't the ones who think they have all the answers, but the ones who are always asking better questions. Remember, this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not a substitute for professional advice. True wisdom begins not with knowledge itself, but with acknowledging the vastness of your own ignorance. Now, I have a question for you. Think about a time you were at the peak of Mount Stupid when you were incredibly confident about something you'd just learned, only to realize later how little you actually knew. What was the topic? Share your story in the comments below. Let's create a space where we can all be a little humble together.